Hi, in this third video, we'll be creating Lambda and exposing it using REST API. So, we will be creating an inline Lambda function and expose it using REST API. In second, we will add environment variable and use it in our function and update it. And once everything is done, we'll destroy the stack. So, we'll start by including Lambda dependency for CDK, okay? So I have created a simple folder for Lambda stack. Now let's create a simple file Lambda stack. Right. So let's add some necessary dependencies. Lambda So let's start with our Lambda function. So I'll name it as hello function. Now we'll use new to create a new resource, lambda dot function. Now this will be our reference, that will be this construct. This will logical name. This would be lambda stacks ctk. And then we'll be adding props for the Lambda. Now you can include code in various manners. Let's see a few of them. Lambda dot code dot. So from asset is you can include your local asset, for example a directory or a file. From asset image is you can include your local Docker image. From bucket you can include the code from S3 bucket straight away. From Docker build is from online Docker, from ECR images, from AWS ECR images, and from inline. So we'll use inline for this purpose, for this training purpose. I'll just take a sample code. Now runtime is the code your language will be using. So I think this will be node 16. Handler would be, for this code it would be index.handler. Now there are various other things, for example description of this lambda, function name, let's just also use function name, CDK training lambda. Okay, now in order to use this lambda, we'll be creating an API which will actually give us back the content of this lambda. Okay, so API is to, we'll be creating REST API for this purpose. Lambda API. Oh, by the way, there shouldn't be a space over here. And then we'll give the props for the API. Let's give a name to this API. So let's give it hello API. And now we'll be adding a resource to this API. So sample resource equals to API dot root So we are basically creating a path to call this API, and we'll be adding a method that will be get method. That can be accessible on this path. We'll be adding lambda integration to this get method, and the function would be this one. So in this case it would be hello function. Okay, so in CDK you can't do console.log. Okay, this won't print anything on your console. Instead, in order to print anything in your console, what you can use is you can use CDK dot CFN, that is control output hello API URL. So we want to output the URL of this API that was created. Okay, so our API dot will be using this API URL for path. So path would be this one. Okay, so this is a very basic lambda that we are creating. There are lots and lots of options you can add in this lambda, but we'll be keeping it very simple for now. So let's include the lambda in our bin file, lambda stack, lambda stack. Now let's do npm run build for TypeScript conversion. And then we'll run CDK deploy all. So the deployment of Lambda and REST API has been started. Let's look into our console. So as you can see, so one is Lambda function itself that will be created, and other is API. API creation has been completed. So this is our API which we have, and our path was hello for our get method. this will be updated once our Lambda has been created. Okay, so as you can see in our console that the output we wanted, right, we were able to get it with the help of CFN output. Okay, so now let's look at the Lambda that was created. So this is the basic Lambda that we wanted. Now let's test it out. So let's just do the testing of the Lambda and see if it works. I just test it out, and as you can see we have a response from our Lambda. Okay, now we exposed this Lambda with the help of our API, right? So in our CFN output, look for the logical name. So here's the logical name, and with this logical name we get the output here. So this is our REST API. Now let's try to call this API and see that what output we get. So as you can see we are able to get the response from Lambda. Okay, now let's add environment variables to our Lambda function. So what we can do is environment, let's do something like message. This is message from env variables, and in our code let's do some changes. So that would be process.env.message. Okay, now let's deploy this Lambda, update it rather. So there are no changes to our API, but our Lambda is getting updated. Now let's look at our Lambda if it was updated or not. So as you can see, oh, I just corrected over here itself. So we added some environment variables. Now in configuration, in environment variables, you can see all the environment variables we passed. Okay, now let's test this Lambda. So we get a reply. Okay, and let's do it from API. So over here as well, we get the same response. Now this was a very basic Lambda and API. Okay. In next video, we'll be taking Lambda to one more step ahead. That's it for this video. Thank you guys. And let's just destroy this. Remember, after everything you do, you destroy your resources which are for testing purpose or not required ahead. API has been deleted and Lambda is getting deleted as well. The delete has been completed. Now let's try to call that API. So the message is forbidden because there is no endpoint over here.